Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, January 27, 2026, time in Texas, about 10 a.m. And thanks for like, subscribe, and share. Some of the sources I'll use today: God in the Bible, Patriot Subscribers, Real Raw News, Hal Turner, BREITBART Plus. Some of the things we'll discuss: blue aurora, which is very rare, tied to, I believe, as do other sources, the pole shift. And what do we have going on in Minnesota? I'll bring out information that appears to tie the Minnesota state and local government to foreign nations, Canada and the CCP, as being involved in an insurrection against the U.S. federal government. And President Trump, Minnesota, insurrection, ? And what's going on with Iran? We do have things going on. So we're going to begin first with space weather. Sun is pretty quiet. We do have solar wind coming off that will produce a low-level geomagnetic storm level 1 tomorrow, January 28. And we have information coming out about a rare event that occurred January 19 to 21, when we had a G5 and down to a G3 level for 3 days. A rare phenomena was documented, whereas auroras are typically red to orange. Blue auroras were seen, and that was a result of the solar particles uniting with nitrogen in our atmosphere. But this indicates, as Ben Davidson with YouTube space weather site put forth, and I agree with, the reason these rare blue auroras were seen is because of the decreased strength of Earth's shield, its electromagnetic shield. And also Ben Davidson puts forth additional information, a white paper, that the South Atlantic anomaly, which is a dip in the Earth's shield, years ago was just over the south part of the Atlantic Ocean around South America. Now, I've been putting out probably for the last year from multiple sources that this dip in the shield over the South Atlantic has widened. I believe it's widened and deepened to be in covering many areas in Africa and extending toward Europe and then across South America into the Pacific Ocean. We know, we have documented from a good source, Stan Deyo, a physicist, that this South Atlantic anomaly had crossed over Africa and covered the Canary Islands, where it was documented that radiation sickness was taking place by the people on the Canary Islands because of the dip in the shield and the sun at that latitude letting in more radiation from the sun. The people were actually experiencing radiation sickness. Radiation sickness has the same symptoms whether you get the radiation from the sun or from a nuke. So that's going on. But Ben Davidson puts forth the South Atlantic anomaly has spread, and it has deepened and is moving north and west. And he ties this, and I agree, that it links up with the weakened shield over the Earth plus the ongoing pole shift. So that's going on. And be careful and wear your sunscreen for sure. And we have this from Dabu77 talking about the cold. We do have now reports in the U.S. of up to 30 plus deaths in the U.S. as a direct result of the cold. We know it's spread mostly, certainly is still intact across 3/4 of the U.S., from Canada down to the South U.S. coastline. So 30 plus deaths. We still have 500,000 to 750,000 people without power. So that's, and we're expecting the second cold front to come in from the Arctic across Canada about Wednesday or Thursday. So that's going on. And we've also had 12,000 plus flights canceled. And now it's put forth that I believe the last figure I gave out of the number of American citizens impacted by this cold was about 240 million. It's now been upped to 270 million. So we see 270 million Americans out of a population of 338 million being affected. So that's going on. It's good to pray for the weather. Only good weather for your people, Father, in the name of Jesus, Yeshua. And we have this. Oh, yes. There was a tragic plane crash out of Bangor, Maine. That happened, today is Tuesday. I believe that happened on Sunday. So, tragic plane crash out of Bangor, Maine. And this was a privately owned small jet owned by a law firm in Houston, Itkin and Arnold. And we have conflicting reports whether there were 6 or 7 or 8 people on the plane. And how many, we do have confirmed reports, I believe, solid. 6 or 7 died in the plane crash, and it's believed possibly there was one survivor who was critically wounded, I believe the assistant pilot. And so this happened Sunday. It happened in a takeoff in a small plane, and I heard a good source, blancolira. He's on YouTube. He's a plane expert, talking about this same type of plane, small jet, CL600, had been involved in the mid-2000s in a crash in Colorado, and the NTSB came out with information that there's a defect in the wings on the small jet, and if you have ice or snow or frost, it has to be all cleaned off of the wings, and you need to make a visual and a tangible with your hand on the wing to be sure there's nothing on the wing. So when the plane took off Sunday night or late in the evening, it had de-iced, and there are certain parameters for de-icing and so many minutes tied to the weather and so on. Now, it appears from the time records that the jet did try to take off within 8 minutes of receiving a Type 1 and Type 4 de-icing fluid on the wing. And the time factor is critical because the de-icing gel sloughs off the wing. But the plane then was trying to take off, and what happened was it flipped over, fell on the ground, and ignited. it appears that this defect on the small jet with regard to any amount of snow, and it was likely snowing, ice or frost on the wings, it's possible to cause the jet to crash. So that did happen tragically over the weekend. Many people, one of the wives of the partners of the law firm, I believe it might have been the Arnold wife, has been touted by local news stations in Houston as an attorney who donated her time to help pro bono many people in the Houston community. So that's a tragic loss for Houston and for the family and friends of the individuals in the plane crash. We have this from U.S. Treasury Secretary Bassett that the U.S. has ended all contracts. I think they had many contracts with Booz Allen Hamilton, some worth $4.8 million, others $21 million. When it was announced the U.S. government was canceling their contracts with Booz Allen Hamilton, their stock went down 11%. The reason being put forth that the U.S. Treasury is now canceling contracts with Booz Allen Hamilton now is that 5 years ago, an employee with this company leaked the tax returns of President Trump and Elon Musk. Now, Booz Allen Hamilton was the same company that employed the CIA whistleblower. I can't recall his name right now. He subsequently went to Russia, Snowden. So I submit this. Apparently, Booz Allen Hamilton has contracts with the U.S. government that enables this company to access confidential computer portals for the U.S. government. I submit this. Something happened now. Some breach by Booz Allen Hamilton of confidential information of the U.S. government, I believe, and that's the reason why all contracts are being canceled. So that's going on. And we have this. We have from PROMETHEAN Update what we're seeing in Minnesota and other places in the U.S., but primarily Minnesota now, reflects a deep state method of color revolution popularized in the UK in the 1800s by a Lord Palmerston. And he put forth, and PROMETHEAN Update says, the same format for color revolutions, uprisings, was used most recently in Ukraine and Syria in the last 10 or so years. So that's going on. And many of these color revolutions and disturbances inside the U.S. and as well as foreign had previously been funded by the U.S. government via USAID, which we know President Trump has gotten rid of. So less money for the commies. So that's going on. And we have this. We have from Stephen Gardner, recently interviewed Roger Stone, a geopolitical analyst, saying President Trump's approval rating is higher now than it's ever been. I've heard some better. Roger Stone says President Trump's approval rating is better than Reagan's at any time. And I submit I've heard up to 90% of the American people approve of President Trump's performance right now. Now we're going to talk about Minnesota. So I have sources, and it does appear that the Minnesota state government, Minnesota local government, in collusion with foreign nations, specifically Canada and the China, CCP, are engaged in an insurrection collusion against the U.S. federal government. So now we had on January 23, reported by Real Raw News, we had 2 platoons of Marines going to Minnesota, and of course they went armed. The U.S. military is authorized, no matter where they are inside the U.S. or foreign locations, the U.S. military may always defend themselves. They anticipated the possibility of encountering violence in Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis. So 2 platoons of Marines went January 23 to Minnesota on recon. Their job was to observe and document possible insurrection activities. So that occurred. Now we have this. Oh, a report from BREITBART. France is having protests also. We're seeing them in U.S. and France and Iran. So the French people are protesting against the French government because the French people don't want any more foreigners to come into their nation. The French people are anti-immigration. So the French government is simply arresting the protesters. And we have this. President Trump has successfully reshaped and retooled the CIA and given them a new mission direction, and that is U.S. national security, which should have been the CIA's primary mission all along. He's using his, what's described by BREITBART as his quiet hammer, CIA Director John Ratcliffe. So that's going on. And we have this. Yeah, gold. So we're seeing space changes, weather changes. This correlates with economic changes, war cycle, and so on. We're seeing gold going up, $5,000 plus per ounce. Silver up again to now $114 per ounce. We have this from Burning Platform that is tying what we're seeing in Minnesota. So we have Minnesota, and we have multiple sources tying money going to the riots from Canada. I have a source for this. And also the CCP. BREITBART brings this up. No, Burning Platform. And I had put similar information out recently. The CCP is putting money into demonstrations against the U.S. government via an American-born Chinese man, Neville Singham, who is now operating out of Shanghai and is using inside the U.S. several organizations, People's Forum and Code Pink and United Community Fund. But this is, and they're now operating via the CCP money source to fund in Minnesota anti-ICE riots. And now we have this coming out from U.S. Intel, as documented by Hal Turner. So I put forth, I add this, a form of cyber warfare called, in Hal Turner's report, digital warfare against infiltrating and documenting the Signal chat platform being used by the organizers of the anti-ICE riots in Minnesota. And I put forth this information likely came from U.S. Military Cyber Command and or CIA cyber operations. As we see, President Trump has remissioned CIA to engage. Their mission is protecting U.S. national security. At any rate, cyber information is coming out. So, U.S. Intel is validating that the Signal chat used by the organizers in Minnesota for anti-ICE groups appears to support the allegation of insurrection. And as I go on, I will tie this to Minnesota state government and the nation of Canada and the CCP and China. And we have this. So we have that this infiltration of Signal chat began January 24, and on Sunday, Sunday, January 25. We know we had that tragic shooting on Saturday, January 24. So this digital warfare began on Sunday after the shooting of Alex Pretty. And they were infiltrating via X to expose anti-ICE digital networks, primarily operating and using Signal chat. And the operative name for the primary infiltrator of the digital networks is CAM, C-A-M, Higby, H-I-G-B-Y. And this information began to come out January 25. It's now being submitted along with this information coming out that it's possible that the infiltration program had been going on for days. And it was to infiltrate the Signal chat used by the anti-ICE organization. And we have this. Yeah, so this digital warfare involved infiltrating Signal chat in real time. And the infiltrator obtained member list for the anti-ICE groups and also their process and information regarding how they vetted members to their anti-ICE group, and documenting that there were hundreds of participants. Now, I have put forth that in these anti-ICE riots, I have researched before, these paid protesters are paid $1,000 to $2,000 per day, and extra money if they can get arrested. So that's going on. So then, the infiltrator to the signal chats caused when apparently because confidential information was coming out about this group, this specific group, the group members began to panic and wonder if they should get out of the state or even get out of the U.S. And we have this. Do I need to leave the state or get out of the U.S.? And the infiltrators were able to obtain information about the money donors. And this was via a website, Chuffed Organization, CHUFFED.org, tying the money donors to the Minneapolis anti-ICE riots as coming from Canada via Johnny, Jonny, Soppottuk, Soppottuk, which is a Canadian community organization. And the infiltrators, I believe, was U.S. military and our CIA, used a software tool, OSINT Magic, to then hone in on the physical locations and identities of the riot protesters who were a part of the organized bases who were being paid. And we have this. And then there's a tie in the information that the infiltrators, U.S. military and our CIA, obtained, tying the anti-ICE riots to Minnesota government, Minnesota AG, Keith Ellison's associate, David Gottfried. And I saw Keith Ellison and David Gottfried just yesterday on TV. The infiltrators, the U.S. Mil and our CIA, also obtained a spreadsheet listing 4,000 donors and puts forth possibly their identities. I believe, of course, they have their identities. And that a church has been identified in Minnesota as providing meals for the paid rioters, and also possibly functioning as being a money laundering site. And this is New Creation Lutheran, located in Shakopee, Minnesota. And we have this. There's also been a connection to another Minnesota government person, and that is the Hennepin County Commissioner, Angela Conley, who's also tied to coordinating shelter for foreigners who are tied to the anti-ICE group. And it's being put forth that the infiltrator used psychological tactics by digital warfare that includes infiltrate and break trust. And we have this. So These efforts by either the U.S. military and our CIA of infiltrating their signal chat networks has resulted in anti-ICE dropping signal chat and regrouping. We had the infiltrators, U.S. Mil and our CIA, also documented another tie to the Minnesota state government, to Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. It's believed was referenced in the signal chats as Flan, F-L-A-N. When this came out, it's been made public. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flan deleted her Facebook, and it's possible that she is also being directly tied to what appears to be a foreign-funded and organized insurrection against the U.S. federal government involving Minnesota government. We also see President Trump, as a result of the tragic shooting of Alex Pretty by ICE Saturday, removing the leader of ICE in Minneapolis, Greg Bovino, and replacing him with border czar Tom Homan. And this is also coming out. Tom Homan's operation of ICE in Minneapolis, his operation will also coordinate with the U.S. government investigating $20 billion plus in welfare fraud that occurred in Minnesota. Plus, we have Congress issuing an investigation into the Somali Ilhan Omar, who represents the state of Minnesota in Congress and the House of Representatives, who's now worth $44 million. That's also being investigated. So we see two money investigations going on, Ilhan Omar, and also welfare fraud in Minnesota. How these will impact Tom Homan's direction of ICE is unknown. President Trump's office is simply putting forth that these are coordinated. Tom Homan's operation of ICE, the investigation into Ilhan Omar, and the investigation into the welfare fraud. I suspect that these investigations into the Ilhan Omar and the welfare fraud is to see if there are what links and what evidence can fall out that ties the state and local governments of Minnesota to these frauds. So that's going on. We have this from BREITBART that President Trump, yes, is sending in Tom Homan, and that Tom Homan's work is also going to be tied to the fraud and investigation and Ilhan Omar's investigation. How did she get so rich so quick? She came from Somalia a few years ago with nothing. Now she's worth $44 million. So that's going on. And also, I'm documenting that Homan's activities will be coordinated with the fraud investigations and also to the investigation into Ilhan Omar. And we have this, okay, what's going on concurrent with the insurrection going on in the U.S.? We see also the U.S. military ramping up to do something in Iran. We know we have many U.S. military assets being pre-staged around Iran. So in the Middle East, comes out from Hal Turner's site, we have several Middle Eastern countries saying to the U.S., you can't use our soil or our airspace to hit Iran. That includes the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Well, I bet these same Middle Eastern countries who entered into military agreements with the U.S. for the U.S. to defend them. I mean, okay. And now we have this, that the U.S. is now wrapped up their pre-staging, moving military assets from both the U.S. and Europe to the Middle East. And we have this, that they're also putting assets on Diego Garcia. And as I've put forth, so we have India, Iran, the small island, Diego Garcia. And we have the commie associate, Keir Starmer, the leader of the UK. Oh, I believe he's in China right now, in Beijing, no doubt to receive his payoff. Because what he did, so we have Africa, we have a small island, Mauritius, and the UK actually owned this island, Diego Garcia, where we have a primary Middle East strategic location for the U.S. military on Diego Garcia. But Keir Starmer gave. This is the U.S. plus a UK strategic security island to the island of Mauritius. And Mauritius, we know, is controlled by the CCP. So we see Keir Starmer being a traitor not only to the UK, but to the U.S. All right, so at any rate, the U.S. does currently have a lot of assets on Diego Garcia and Al Ubaid base in Qatar. Recall, Qatar is one of the Middle East locations who said to the U.S., you cannot use our soil or airspace to hit Iran. But hey, if Qatar is hit, we expect you, U.S. military, to stand up to defend us. Okay, shut up, Qatar and UAE and Saudi Arabia. President Trump, you need to get us, it appears, out of those military agreements, because we see these Middle East nations don't want to stand with America. And we have this. Also, we have Iran. We have Oman. Oman is right next to Yemen and the Red Sea. So we see off of the coast, Oman, we have a USS carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. We have two other carriers in the Middle East, the USS Bush and the USS Roosevelt. So we have the USS Lincoln now off of the coast of Oman. We have, since January 15, on Diego Garcia, 50-plus cargo planes going there. And we have there 13 F-15s plus many refuelers. And we've had also many flights to Diego Garcia from Djibouti. And we've had cargo flights going into Qatar and Kuwait. So we see a continued buildup. We have now 36 F-15s in Jordan. So Jordan would be right about here. Israel here. And we have 6 U.S. destroyer warships in this area around Iran, plus 2 subs. Plus we have a squadron of RAF Typhoons that's out of the UK. Plus we have many F-16s in Israel. And we understand the objection. There was a joint meeting recently between U.S. CENTCOM and Israel. The U.S. military objective in hitting Iran is capitulation. And it's believed that the number of unarmed civilians that Iran, its government and military, have killed of its own people is approaching 100,000. We have this from New York Prepper. Yes, the USS Lincoln is near Oman, and it's located 700 kilometers from Iran. So that's going on. And now a plan for Israel to evac tourists who are currently in Israel, 42,000, is ongoing. And we have this. Iran, this is new information coming out this morning, January 27, about 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from U.S. Intel, that an explosion was heard, I believe that was near Isfahan, was heard this morning. No, it was heard near the Parchin nuclear site. So an explosion was heard this morning in Iran near the Parchin nuclear site, an explosion which has been admitted to by Iran. It's unknown by U.S. Intel if this was U.S. military hit or was this Iran testing or moving nukes. So that's going on. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.